I sat at my dining table, watching my daughter Sarah's husband Jacques exchange smirks with his parents while speaking rapid French. They thought I was just another ignorant American. What they didn't know was that I'd spent 15 years working for Airbus in Toulouse. As Jacques called me, un vieil imbécile, and his mother laughed, I gripped my wine glass remembering how I'd welcomed this man into our family. But tonight, everything would change. Some lessons are best taught with patience. 6 months before that painful dinner, I stood in the morning sunlight streaming through the windows of St. Augustine's Cathedral, adjusting my tie for the 100th time. My daughter Sarah was getting married, and despite the joy I should have felt, something gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. Sarah looked radiant in her mother's wedding dress, carefully altered to fit her perfectly. Emily had worn that dress 35 years ago, when she married me, and now our little girl was walking down the aisle toward Jacques Beaumont, the man who had swept her off her feet just 18 months earlier. Jacques cut an impressive figure standing at the altar. At 34, he carried himself with the confidence of someone born into privilege. His tailored Armani suit probably cost more than I made in a month during my early days at Boeing. He had that particular way of standing that suggested he owned whatever room he occupied. Shoulders back, chin slightly elevated, a perpetual half-smile, playing at the corners of his mouth, as if he knew something amusing that others didn't. The Beaumont family occupied the first 3 rows on the groom's side. Henri Beaumont. Jacques' father sat ramrod straight, his silver hair perfectly coiffed, wearing a suit that screamed old money. Beside him, Marguerite Beaumont dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief, though I noticed her tears seemed more performance than genuine emotion. The rest of their contingent consisted of cousins, business associates, and what appeared to be French nobility, judging by their bearing and the subtle sneers they directed at our simpler Midwestern gathering. I had tried to like Jacques from the beginning. When Sarah first brought him home for dinner 2 years ago, he had seemed charming enough. He brought expensive wine, complimented my home, and showed interest in my work as an aerospace engineer. He told stories about his work as an investment banker at Preston Whitfield and Associates, dropping names of deals worth hundreds of millions. Sarah hung on his every word, her eyes shining with an adoration I hadn't seen since her mother passed. The warning signs started small. During our 3rd dinner together, Jacques made an offhand comment about how quaint it was that I still lived in the same house for 20 years. When I mentioned my pride in paying off the mortgage early, he laughed and said something about old-fashioned American values, in a tone that made it clear he didn't mean it as a compliment. Sarah had kicked him under the table, and he'd quickly covered with a smile and a subject change. Then, there was the prenuptial agreement. Jacques had presented it as standard procedure, just something the family lawyers insist on. Sarah had been hurt initially, but Jacques worked his charm explaining it was to protect both of them, that it was really about keeping their love pure and separate from financial concerns. I'd advised Sarah to have her own lawyer review it, which she did, but by then, she was so deep in the wedding planning that she would have signed anything. The wedding itself was a testament to excess. Jacques had insisted on the cathedral, the country club reception, the 12-piece band flown in from New York, the flowers imported from Holland. Every suggestion I made to scale back was met with that condescending smile and a pat on the shoulder. "Damien," he'd say, "Sarah deserves the best. Don't worry about the cost. This is an investment in our future." Except I was the one writing the checks. The final tally came to just over $200,000, a sum that made my stomach churn. The Beaumonts could have easily covered it. Their hotel empire was supposedly worth tens of millions. But somehow it became a matter of tradition that the bride's family pay. Henri had explained this to me over cognac one evening, his English heavily accented, but his meaning crystal clear. This was the price of admission to their world. During the reception, I found myself standing alone on the terrace, watching the festivities through the French doors. The Beaumonts held court at their table, speaking in rapid French, occasionally glancing my way with expressions I couldn't quite read. Sarah floated between tables, glowing with happiness, while Jacques worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and kissing cheeks. My brother Tom found me there, nursing my scotch. "Hell of a party," he said, though his tone suggested he was as overwhelmed as I was. Emily would have hated this, I admitted, thinking of my late wife's simple tastes and genuine nature. She would have seen right through all this posturing. Tom nodded, sipping his beer. "Sarah seems happy, though." "She does," I agreed, though the knot in my stomach tightened. "I just hope it lasts." The moment that would replay in my mind for months afterward came during the toasts. I had just finished my father of the bride speech, carefully crafted to welcome Jacques to our family, while honoring Emily's memory. The room had applauded politely, and I was returning to my seat when I passed behind Jacques and his cousin Laurent. They were speaking in English, but quietly assuming the band's volume would cover their conversation. I caught only a fragment, but it was enough to chill my blood. Securing the American branch of the family empire. Her inheritance should solve the immediate problems and her father's patents. Laurent had noticed me then, and coughed, switching immediately to French. Jacques had seen me, and his smile never wavered. "Damien, wonderful speech. You must be so proud." He'd clapped me on the shoulder, steering me away from their conversation with practiced ease. I'd wanted to confront him, to demand an explanation. But this was Sarah's day. The doubt I'd pushed down for months crystallized into something harder, sharper. My aerospace training had taught me to pay attention to small anomalies, because they often indicated larger system failures. That fragment of conversation was more than an anomaly. It was a klaxon warning. For the rest of the reception, I watched with new eyes. I noticed how Jacques' family members would study our guests, calculating worth and value like appraisers at an auction. I saw how Jacques himself would touch Sarah possessively whenever wealthy guests approached, marking his territory. Most telling was during the cake cutting, when Sarah playfully smooshed a bit of frosting on Jacques' nose. For just a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw pure fury flash across his features before the practiced smile returned. The evening ended with sparklers and well wishes as the newlyweds departed for their honeymoon in Bora Bora. Sarah hugged me tight, whispering, "Thank you for everything, Dad. I know Mom would have loved this." I held her close, smelling the gardenia in her hair, the same flowers her mother had worn at our wedding. "Just be happy, sweetheart," I whispered back. "That's all I want." As their limo pulled away, Henri Beaumont appeared at my elbow. "A beautiful wedding, Damien. Welcome to the family." His English was perfect when he wanted it to be, I noticed. "I'm sure this is just the beginning of a very profitable relationship for all of us." The way he said profitable made my skin crawl. I managed a nod and a handshake, but as the Beaumonts climbed into their own waiting car, speaking animated French, I heard my name mentioned several times, followed by laughter. Standing in the empty parking lot of the country club, the fairy lights still twinkling in the trees, I made a decision. I would watch. I would wait. And I would protect my daughter, even if she didn't know she needed protecting. Emily might not be here to spot the wolves circling our little girl, but I was. The next morning, I called Robert Chen at First National Bank, where I'd done business for 30 years. "Robert," I said, "I need you to help me set up some additional security on all my accounts. And I want alerts on any credit inquiries using my information or Sarah's." "Everything okay, Damien?" Robert asked, concern in his voice. "Just being cautious," I replied. But in my gut, I knew I was preparing for war. 3 months after the wedding, autumn had painted the trees surrounding my house in brilliant shades of gold and crimson. Sarah and Jacques had returned from their extended honeymoon, settling into a luxury penthouse downtown that cost more per month than most people made in a year. They visited every Sunday for dinner, a tradition I'd insisted on maintaining, despite Jacques' subtle attempts to reduce it to monthly occasions. It was during one of these Sunday visits that Sarah approached me in my home office, while Jacques was outside taking a business call. She perched on the edge of the leather chair Emily had given me for my 50th birthday, fidgeting with her wedding ring. "Dad," she began, then paused, looking uncomfortable. "I need to ask you about Mom's trust fund." I set down the technical journal I'd been reading, giving her my full attention. "What about it, sweetheart?" "Well, I know Mom set it up for me to inherit when I turned 35. But I was wondering about the specifics. The amount, the terms, that kind of thing." She wasn't meeting my eyes, focusing instead on a family photo from our last vacation with Emily, taken just 2 months before the cancer diagnosis. "Why the sudden interest?" I asked carefully. "You've got 2 more years before it matters." Sarah shifted in her seat. "Jacques thinks we should be planning ahead. He says proper financial planning means understanding all our assets and liabilities. He's got this whole spreadsheet system." Through the window, I could see Jacques pacing the garden, gesticulating as he spoke into his phone. Even from here, I could read the tension in his shoulders, the sharp, aggressive movements of his free hand. "Your mother was very specific about the trust," I said, choosing my words carefully. $3 million to be released on your 35th birthday. The principal has been growing nicely with conservative investments. Should be close to $3.5 million by the time you receive it." Sarah's eyes widened slightly. I realized she hadn't known the exact amount. "That much?" "Your mother was a brilliant investor," I said, feeling the familiar ache when speaking of Emily. "She started putting money aside the day you were born. Every bonus I received, every patent royalty check, she'd divide it between your college fund and this trust. She used to say it was your independence fund, to ensure you'd never have to stay in a bad situation for financial reasons." The irony of Emily's foresight wasn't lost on me. Sarah noticed my expression and reached over to squeeze my hand. "I miss her too, Dad," she said softly. Then, brightening artificially, "Jacques will be pleased. He's been worried about our retirement planning. You know how he is about financial security." I did know. In the 3 months since the wedding, Jacques had shown an increasingly keen interest in our family's financial situation. It started with casual questions about my retirement portfolio, then progressed to more specific inquiries about my work at Boeing and later Airbus. "Speaking of finances," Sarah continued, "Jacques was wondering about your patents. The aerospace stuff. He says intellectual property is an undervalued asset class, and we should make sure everything is properly structured for tax purposes." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "My patents are handled by Boeing's legal department and my own attorneys. Everything is properly structured, I assure you." "Of course," Sarah said quickly. "He's just trying to help. You know Jacques. He can't help but see financial opportunities everywhere." Over the following weeks, Jacques' interest in our family finances became less subtle. He started dropping by during the week, always with some excuse. Picking up Sarah's forgotten sunglasses, returning a borrowed book, bringing me a bottle of wine from his personal collection. Each visit included probing questions wrapped in casual conversation. One Tuesday afternoon, I found him in my office when I returned from a doctor's appointment. He was standing by my desk, smartphone in hand. "Damien," he exclaimed, not showing a hint of embarrassment. "Sarah sent me to grab her grandmother's ring from your safe. She wants to have it cleaned." I knew for a fact that Sarah's grandmother's ring was in her jewelry box at home because she'd worn it to dinner the previous Sunday. "I'll get it for her," I said evenly, moving to block his view of my desk. "No rush," Jacques said, but his eyes were scanning the papers I'd left out. Nothing important, thankfully, just some technical specifications for a consulting project. "Say while I'm here I wanted to run something by you. A friend of mine specializes in estate planning for high-net-worth individuals. I thought maybe you'd like to meet with him, make sure everything is set up efficiently for Sarah's future." "I have excellent lawyers, thank you," I replied. Of course," Jacques waved his hand dismissively. "But it never hurts to get a second opinion right, especially with the new tax laws. You could be leaving money on the table." That evening, I called my old friend Marcus Thompson. Marcus had retired from the FBI 5 years earlier, and now ran a private investigation firm. We'd met years ago when Boeing had some corporate espionage concerns, and we'd stayed in touch. "I need a favor," I said after the pleasantries. "Quiet background check. My son-in-law." "The French guy Sarah married?" Marcus asked. "Thought he seemed slick at the wedding. What's got your antenna up?" I explained the recent incidents, the financial probing, the unexpected office visit. Marcus listened without interrupting, occasionally making affirming noises. "Send me everything you have on him," Marcus said finally. "Full name, social, previous addresses, employment history. I'll do some digging." A week later, my banking friend Robert called with concerning news. "Damien, you asked me to flag any unusual activity. Someone's been making credit inquiries using Sarah's information. 3 credit cards applied for in the last week, all high-limit cards." "Were they approved?" "2 were. The 3rd is pending. Damien, the applications show joint ownership with her husband." My blood ran cold. "Can you freeze them?" "Not without Sarah's authorization. But I can send her the fraud alert notices directly." "Do it," I said. That weekend, I confronted Sarah gently about the credit cards. She seemed surprised, but not alarmed. "Oh, those. Jacques said we needed to build our joint credit history for when we buy a house." She must have seen my expression, because she quickly added, "Dad, it's fine. We're keeping the balances low. Jacques is very responsible with money." "Sarah, honey, you make good money as a pediatric surgeon. Your credit is excellent. You don't need to build anything." A flash of irritation crossed her face, so reminiscent of her mother when she felt cornered. "Dad, I know you're protective, but I'm a grown woman. Jacques is my husband. We make financial decisions together." I backed off, but the unease in my stomach grew heavier. Emily would have known how to handle this, how to make Sarah see without pushing her away. I was just an engineer, trained to see problems and fix them. But how do you fix a problem when the person you're trying to protect doesn't see the danger? 2 days later, while organizing tax documents, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. In Sarah's medical bag, left at my house after she'd stopped by to check my blood pressure, I found a folder marked Estate Planning. Inside was a draft power of attorney document, comprehensive and far-reaching. It granted Jacques full control over Sarah's financial and medical decisions in case of incapacitation. Standard enough except for 2 details. It was dated for her 35th birthday, the exact day she'd receive Emily's trust, and it included broad language about mental exhaustion and temporary psychological incapacity as triggers. I photographed every page before returning the folder to her bag. That evening, I called my lawyer, then Marcus. "We need to accelerate the investigation," I told him. "Something's not right here." "Already on it," Marcus replied. "And Damien, you're not going to like what I'm finding. This guy's got a history, and it's not pretty." As I hung up, I looked at the photo of Emily on my desk. "I'll protect her," I whispered. "I promise." Outside, the autumn winds stripped the last leaves from the trees, leaving them bare and exposed. Winter was coming, and with it, I feared a storm that would test everything our family had built. But I would be ready. For Sarah, for Emily's memory, I would be ready. The November evening arrived with an early winter chill that seemed to seep through the windows of my colonial home. I had spent the afternoon preparing for our monthly family dinner, a tradition I'd managed to maintain, despite Jacques' increasing attempts to redirect these gatherings to restaurants or their penthouse. Tonight was different, though. Henri and Marguerite Beaumont had flown in from their Manhattan base to visit, and Sarah had insisted on hosting them at my home. "Your house has such character, Dad," she'd said on the phone. "And you're the better cook. Please." I couldn't refuse her, even though every instinct warned me against this gathering. Marcus's preliminary findings were troubling, though incomplete, and I needed to maintain normalcy while he finished his investigation. The Beaumonts arrived precisely at 6, emerging from a black Mercedes that probably cost more than most people's houses. Henri stepped out first, helping Marguerite navigate my gravel driveway in her designer heels. They came bearing gifts. A bottle of Chateau Margaux that I recognized as worth at least $2,000. Damien. Henri greeted me at the door, his handshake firm but cold. How charming to see you again. This wine should complement whatever simple fare you've prepared. The backhanded compliment rolled off his tongue so smoothly that anyone listening might have missed the insult. I accepted the wine with grace, leading them to the living room where Jacques was already holding court by the fireplace, a glass of my scotch in hand. Maman, papa. Jacques rose to kiss his parents in the European fashion. They immediately launched into rapid French, their voices carrying the musical cadence of native speakers. I busied myself with drink preparations, understanding every word. The house is smaller than you described, Marguerite observed in French, her gaze taking in my family photos and Emily's collection of first-edition books. Rather provincial, wouldn't you say? It serves its purpose, Jacques replied in the same language. The old man is attached to it. Something about memories of his dead wife. I poured Marguerite's wine, my hand steady, despite the casual cruelty of his words. 23 years of marriage reduced to a dismissive phrase. Emily had loved this house, had planted the garden that still bloomed each spring, had refinished these hardwood floors while pregnant with Sarah. Your scotch, Henri, I said in English, handing him a crystal tumbler. Merci, he responded, then continued in French to his wife. At least he keeps good liquor. Though I suspect it's the only bottle he owns. They laughed, a tinkling sound, devoid of warmth. I excused myself to check on dinner, but positioned myself where I could still hear their conversation through the dining room's open archway. How much longer must we endure this charade? Marguerite asked. The hotels in Nice and Bordeaux need immediate capital injection. The creditors are becoming insistent. Patience, maman, Jacques soothed. 2 more years until Sarah's trust matures. I've already laid the groundwork. She trusts me completely. 2 years. Henri's voice turned sharp. We don't have 2 years. The board is asking questions. If they discover the extent of the losses. Which is why we accelerate the timeline. Jacques interrupted. There are ways to access trust funds early. Medical emergencies, mental health interventions. Sarah's been working 18-hour shifts. It wouldn't be difficult to document exhaustion, perhaps even a breakdown. My hand tightened on the kitchen counter until my knuckles went white. They were discussing my daughter like a business acquisition, plotting to destroy her career and reputation for money. And the father? Marguerite inquired. His patents alone could solve our immediate problems. The old fool dotes on Sarah, Jacques said dismissively. Once we have control of her assets, he'll sign anything to help his precious daughter. If not, he let the threat hang in the air. Speaking of the old fool, Henri chuckled. Did you see his face at the wedding when Laurent mentioned the inheritance? I thought his eyes might pop out of his head. These Americans so transparent in their emotions. He understood nothing, Jacques assured them. The man probably thinks bonjour is the extent of French vocabulary. Did you know he actually worked as a mechanic on airplanes? Not even a real engineer, just a grease monkey with pretensions. I had heard enough for the moment. I returned to the living room with a tray of appetizers, my expression pleasantly neutral. Dinner will be ready shortly, I announced. Please help yourselves to the hors d'oeuvres. How delightful, Marguerite said in accented English, selecting a canapé with obvious reluctance. Did you make these yourself? Family recipe, I replied. My wife's, actually. Ah, yes, your late wife, she said with false sympathy. Such a tragedy. Cancer, wasn't it? So common here in America. Must be the diet. Before I could respond, Sarah arrived rushing in from the hospital still wearing her scrubs under her coat. She looked exhausted, shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Sorry I'm late, she said, kissing Jacques perfunctorily before greeting his parents. Emergency surgery ran long. 6-year-old with appendicitis. You saved a child's life today, I said, helping her with her coat. Never apologize for that. Jacques' expression flickered with annoyance before smoothing back to concern. Darling, you look exhausted. Perhaps you should reduce your hours. We've discussed this. We have, Sarah agreed wearily, but I have responsibilities. My patients need me. What you need, Marguerite interjected, is rest. In France, we understand the importance of balance. This American obsession with work, it's unhealthy. The irony of work-life balance advice from people plotting to steal my daughter's money wasn't lost on me. I ushered everyone to the dining room where I'd set the table with Emily's china, the pattern Sarah had always loved. As I served the soup course, the Beaumonts resumed their French conversation, apparently confident in their privacy. They discussed their financial troubles in shocking detail. Hotels leveraged beyond sustainability, personal debts to unsavory characters, a pyramid scheme of loans upon loans that would collapse within weeks without fresh capital. The marriage was your idea, Henri reminded Jacques coldly in French. You assured us the American doctor would be an easy mark. She is, Jacques insisted. The trust fund is real verified. The father's patents are worth at least $5 million. Once we have power of attorney, it's simple asset liquidation. And if she resists? Marguerite asked. She won't, Jacques said with chilling confidence. She's already overwhelmed. A few more months of pressure, perhaps a mild sedative regimen to help her cope, and she'll sign anything for relief. If necessary, a short stay at a private facility can be arranged. Dr. Beauchamp in Switzerland owes our family favors. My hand trembled slightly as I ladled soup. They were discussing imprisoning my daughter, drugging her, destroying her life as casually as planning a vacation. I forced myself to remain calm, to serve each course with steady hands, while documenting every word in my memory. This soup, Henri announced in English, is surprisingly adequate. What is it? French onion, I replied evenly. I learned to make it in Toulouse. Jacques laughed. Dad visited France once on business. He loves to mention it. The condescension in his voice was thick as honey. The conversation continued in this vein throughout dinner. In English, they offered patronizing compliments and subtle insults. In French, they revealed the depth of their desperation and criminality. They mocked my home, my career, my careful saving and investing. They called me the old fool, the widower, the impediment. They joked about nursing homes, about accidents that could be arranged, about how easy it would be to isolate Sarah from her support system. He'll be gone within 5 years anyway, Marguerite observed in French over dessert. Men like him, they don't last long after their wives die. He'll drink himself to death or simply fade away. 5 years is too long, Henri replied. We need solutions now. I served coffee with hands that wanted to shake with rage. Sarah, beautiful, trusting Sarah, sat beside the man who was plotting her destruction, occasionally touching his hand with affection that broke my heart. She looked so tired, so worn down already. How long had Jacques been working on her, undermining her confidence, pushing her toward the breakdown they needed? As they prepared to leave, I helped Sarah into her coat. She hugged me, whispering, "Thanks for dinner, Dad. I know they can be a bit much, but they mean well." I held her close, smelling hospital antiseptic and her mother's perfume. "You work too hard, sweetheart. Take care of yourself." Jacques says the same thing. She smiled tiredly. Maybe you're both right. After they left, I stood in my kitchen staring at the sink full of dishes that had served such poisonous conversation. Then I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus. "I need everything you have," I said without preamble. "And I need you to connect me with your contact at the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. This is bigger than just a bad marriage." "That bad?" Marcus asked. "Worse," I replied. "They're planning to destroy her, and they think I'm too stupid to stop them." I poured myself a scotch, the good stuff, not the swill Henri had assumed was my only bottle, and sat in Emily's chair by the fireplace. The Beaumonts had made a critical error tonight. They'd assumed the American aerospace engineer couldn't speak French, couldn't understand their plotting, couldn't possibly be a threat to their sophisticated schemes. They were about to learn that patience and intelligence come in many forms, and that underestimating a protective father was the worst mistake of their entitled lives. The recording device I'd installed in my dining room light fixture had captured every word in crystal clarity. It was time to begin building my case. Outside snow began to fall, blanketing the world in deceptive purity. But I knew what corruption lay beneath that pristine surface, and I would expose it all to save my daughter. The meeting with Marcus took place in his office 3 days after the dinner party. The converted warehouse space in the industrial district didn't look like much from the outside, but inside, it housed state-of-the-art surveillance equipment and computer systems that would make the NSA jealous. Marcus had done well for himself after leaving the bureau. "Sit down, Damien," he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. "You're not going to like what I found." He slid a thick folder across the desk. I opened it to find a photograph of Jacques younger and clean-shaven, standing next to a beautiful brunette in what appeared to be a wedding photo. "Meet the first Mrs. Jacques Beaumont," Marcus said. Sylvie Moreau married in 2015 in Lyon. Her family owned a chain of boutique hotels across southern France. Owned, I caught the past tense. By 2018, the hotels were bankrupt. Mysterious financial mismanagement funds transferred to offshore accounts that vanished. Sylvie divorced him after discovering he'd remortgaged properties using forged signatures. She lost everything. I turned the page to find another wedding photo, this one showing Jacques, with a blonde woman against a Swiss mountain backdrop. Wife number 2, Anna Richter, married in 2019. Her father was a prominent banker in Zurich. She died in 2021. My blood chilled. How? Officially, accidental overdose of prescription medications. But dig deeper. Marcus pulled out a police report. The investigators had questions. The medications in her system weren't prescribed to her. The life insurance payout was 2 million euros, and Jacques was the sole beneficiary. The case was closed due to insufficient evidence after the Beaumont family's lawyers got involved. I stared at the photo of Anna Richter. She looked happy, trusting in love, just like Sarah. "There's more," Marcus continued. "I tracked down Sylvie Moreau. She's living with her sister in Marseille working as a hotel desk clerk. She was willing to talk Damien. The pattern is always the same. Jacques targets women with family money charms, isolates them from their support systems, then systematically drains their assets. But Sarah's trust is protected," I said. "She can't access it for 2 more years." Marcus pulled out another document. "That's what I thought. But look at this. It's a legal precedent from New York. Trust funds can be accessed early under specific circumstances: medical emergencies, mental incapacitation, or if the beneficiary is deemed unable to manage their affairs." The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. The power of attorney document dated for Sarah's birthday. Jacques' constant pressure about her work hours. The mentions of sedatives and Swiss doctors. "He's going to have her committed," I breathed. "That's the pattern," Marcus confirmed. "Sylvie told me he tried the same with her. Started documenting her erratic behavior, convinced her to take anxiety medications that made her foggy, had a psychiatrist friend ready to sign commitment papers. She only escaped because her brother was a lawyer who intervened." "What about his banking career?" I asked. "Preston Whitfield and Associates." Marcus actually laughed, though there was no humor in it. "He was an intern there for 6 months in 2014, fired for expense account fraud. He's been living off women and his family's reputation ever since. The Beaumont hotels. They're hemorrhaging money. I have a contact in French financial circles. They're weeks away from bankruptcy. The family owes millions to some very dangerous people." I thought about Henri and Marguerite's desperation, their casual discussion of timeline acceleration. How dangerous? "The kind who don't accept bankruptcy as an excuse for non-payment," Marcus said grimly. "The Beaumonts aren't just greedy, Damien. They're desperate, and desperate people." Do desperate things, I finished. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What's your play here? You could go to Sarah with this. I shook my head. She won't believe me. She'll think I'm being overprotective, that I never gave Jacques a chance. She might even tell him, and then they'll accelerate whatever timeline they're working on. So what then? I thought of Emily, how she'd always played the long game. I need more evidence, and I need to protect Sarah's assets before they can touch them. Over the following days, I worked with military precision. My lawyer, Gregory Hartman, helped me restructure my own assets, moving my patents into an irrevocable trust that couldn't be accessed or transferred under any circumstances. I liquidated some investments, creating a war chest of immediately available funds. I want you to set up another trust, I told Gregory. For Sarah. Fund it with enough to cover any medical expenses, legal fees, whatever she might need. But structure it so only she can access it, and only if she's free from any conservatorship or power of attorney. Gregory, who'd known our family for 20 years, didn't ask questions. I'll make it bulletproof, he promised. Marcus, meanwhile, dove deeper into the Beaumont family finances. What he found was a web of fraud spanning decades. Shell companies embezzled funds, insurance fraud, tax evasion. The list was extensive. They've been getting away with this because they target people who are either too embarrassed to pursue charges or, in Anna's case, unable to, Marcus explained during another meeting. But they've gotten sloppy. The French authorities are already investigating some of their hotel transactions. I made a decision that would have seemed extreme just months ago. I want surveillance on Jacques. Everything. Where he goes, who he meets, what he does when Sarah's at work. Marcus raised an eyebrow. That's expensive, and we need to be careful about legality. Do it, I said, whatever it costs. The surveillance revealed the final pieces of the puzzle. Jacques was meeting regularly with a Dr. Harrison Cromwell, a psychiatrist, who'd lost his license in 2 states for ethical violations, but still maintained a private practice. He was also in frequent contact with a lawyer named Vincent Sharp, who specialized in conservatorships and had a reputation for bending rules. Most damning was what we discovered about Jacques' affair. Her name was Melissa Grant, wife of his supposed lawyer friend. The surveillance photos showed them entering hotels during lunch hours, intimate dinners while Sarah worked late. Marcus's investigator even captured audio of Jacques, promising Melissa that once he had Sarah's money, they could run away together. He's planning to take the money and disappear, Marcus said. Leave Sarah institutionalized while he starts fresh with the mistress. I felt sick. My brilliant, kind daughter, who saved children's lives, who still brought flowers to her mother's grave every Sunday, was nothing but a mark to these people. The investigation also revealed Sarah's deteriorating state. Pharmacy records showed prescriptions for anxiety medications and sleeping pills, all prescribed by doctors Jacques had recommended. Her work schedule had become even more erratic. Colleagues Marcus interviewed mentioned she seemed foggy, forgetful, not herself. They're already implementing the plan, Marcus warned. You need to move soon. I gathered all the evidence. Financial records, surveillance reports, audio recordings, the full dossier on Jacques' past. It filled 3 bankers' boxes. Then, I reached out to Special Agent Diana Foster at the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, an old contact from my Boeing days. This is interstate fraud, possibly international, Diana said after reviewing the preliminary evidence. If what you're showing me is accurate, we're talking about RICO violations, conspiracy fraud. This is Big Damien. How long before you can act? I asked. I need more. The recording from the dinner party is good, but it's in French. I need English documentation, financial transfers. We can trace something concrete. I thought about the power of attorney document, the credit cards in Sarah's name, the prescription medications. What if I can get him on tape discussing the plan in English? What if I can document financial fraud in real time? Diana leaned forward. Then we'd have a case. A strong one. Driving home that night, I passed by Sarah's hospital. Her car was in the parking lot as usual. She was working another late shift, while her husband plotted to destroy her life. I pulled over and sat in my car, watching the lit windows of the pediatric ward, where she was probably saving another child's life. I'm going to stop them, I promised the night air. All of them. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Jacques just booked 2 tickets to Switzerland for next month. One way. The timeline was accelerating. But I was ready. The predators thought they were hunting my daughter, but they didn't realize they'd walked into a trap of their own making. An aerospace engineer's trap built with precision and patience. The next family dinner was in 2 weeks. I had that long to prepare the final phase of my plan. The Beaumonts wanted to mock the old widower in French, while stealing his daughter's future. They were about to learn that sometimes the quiet ones, the ones you dismiss and underestimate, are the most dangerous of all. I drove home to my empty house, but for the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. Emily's presence seemed to fill the rooms, her strength flowing through me. Together, even separated by death, we would protect our daughter. The 2 weeks following my meeting with the FBI passed in a blur of careful preparation. I moved through my days with the same methodical precision I'd once applied to aerospace calculations, each action calculated for maximum impact. The Beaumonts thought they were playing chess while I played checkers. They were wrong. I wasn't playing at all. I was engineering their destruction. My first stop was Thomas Wellington, an old colleague from my Airbus days, who now ran a private security firm specializing in corporate protection. His office occupied the top floor of a gleaming downtown high-rise, a far cry from the hangars where we'd once worked side by side. Damien, he greeted me warmly. Been too long. Still consulting. Actually, Tom, I need your help with something personal, I said, laying out the situation. His expression grew increasingly grim as I spoke. Jesus, he muttered when I finished. Your own son-in-law. Can you help? Tom was already reaching for his phone. I've got just the guy. James Morrison, former Special Forces, now does high-end personal security. If you need evidence gathered legally and professionally, he's your man. Within 3 days, Morrison had installed a comprehensive security system in my home. All perfectly legal since it was my property. High-definition cameras covered every angle, audio recording capabilities in all common areas, and everything backed up to secure cloud servers. The beauty of this system, Morrison explained, is that it's completely invisible. Your guests will never know they're being recorded. And since Minnesota is a one-party consent state, as long as you're present and aware of the recording, it's admissible. I also hired a forensic accountant named Patricia Williams, recommended by Gregory. She specialized in unraveling complex financial frauds and had testified in numerous federal cases. I need you to analyze these, I said, handing her copies of the Beaumont financial records Marcus had obtained. Find every discrepancy, every fraudulent transfer, every pattern. Patricia's eyes lit up as she scanned the documents. Oh, this is delicious. Look here. They're layering transactions through multiple shells. Classic money laundering. And these hotel valuations inflated by at least 40% for loan applications. That's bank fraud. While Patricia worked her magic with numbers, I met with Dr. Amanda Carter, Sarah's best friend and colleague at the hospital. We met for coffee near the medical center, and I could see the worry etched on her face before I even sat down. Mr. Damien, she began, then paused. I'm glad you called. I've been concerned about Sarah. Tell me everything, I said gently. Amanda's words confirmed my worst fears. She's not herself, forgetting things, seeming confused during procedures. Yesterday, she nearly prescribed the wrong medication dosage. Caught herself, thank God, but she was shaken. She keeps saying she's just tired, but you think it's more than that? Amanda nodded, tears forming. She mentioned Jacques has been giving her supplements to help with stress. Natural herbs, he says. But Damien, I've seen patients with these symptoms. Whatever she's taking, it's not herbs. I carefully showed Amanda some of what I'd discovered about Jacques. Her face went white. Oh my God, she breathed. We have to tell her. Not yet, I said firmly. If we move too soon, they'll accelerate their timeline. I need you to do something for me. Can you get a sample of whatever Jacques is giving her? Have it analyzed. Amanda nodded firmly. I'll do it. Sarah's like a sister to me. I'll protect her. My next move was bolder. I reached out to Philippe Durant, my old supervisor from Airbus, who was now retired in Lyon. We'd stayed in touch over the years, exchanging Christmas cards and the occasional email. Philippe, I said during our video call, I need information about the Beaumont family, specifically their hotel properties in Nice and Bordeaux. Philippe's expression darkened. Ah, the Beaumonts. Yes, they're well known here, and not favorably. Why do you ask? I explained the situation with Sarah. Philippe's Gallic temper flared. Those parasites, he spat. I will make some calls. My nephew works in the prefecture. If there are investigations, he will know. While my network gathered intelligence, I took care of practical matters. I transferred significant funds to the protected trust for Sarah, ensuring she'd have resources no matter what happened. I updated my will with specific language preventing Jacques from any inheritance. I even met with 3 different medical specialists to document my excellent health, preempting any claims of mental decline the Beaumonts might make. Robert Chen at the bank proved invaluable. I've been tracking those credit cards, he told me during a private meeting. Jacques has run up $30,000 in debt in Sarah's name. Luxury goods, jewelry, hotel stays. But here's the interesting part. Many of the purchases correspond with charges on another card belonging to a Melissa Grant, the mistress. He was buying her gifts with my daughter's credit. 10 days before the planned dinner, Amanda came through. She appeared at my door one evening, holding a small bottle of pills. I swapped them during a dinner at their place, she said. Replace them with Harmon's vitamins. Sarah won't know the difference. And at least, she's not ingesting whatever poison this is. I had the pills analyzed by a private lab. The results were chilling. A cocktail of benzodiazepines and mood stabilizers, the kind of combination that would leave someone foggy compliant and presenting symptoms easily mistaken for mental breakdown. In high enough doses, the lab technician explained, this combination could certainly impair judgment sufficiently to support a conservatorship petition. Armed with this evidence, I met again with FBI agent Diana Foster. She reviewed everything with the focused intensity I remembered from our Boeing days. This is good, Damien. Really good. But I need more for a federal case. Can you get Jacques to discuss the fraud explicitly, preferably touching on the interstate elements? I'm working on it, I assured her. The next family dinner is in 5 days. I have a plan. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I sent Jacques an email mentioning that I was considering updating my estate planning and wanted his advice given his financial expertise. I hinted at concerns about tax implications for my patents if something happened to me. As expected, Jacques took the bait, calling immediately to offer his assistance. During the call, I played the role of the confused old man perfectly. These patents, I said with calculated uncertainty. Boeing says they're worth quite a bit, but I don't really understand all the legal complexities. Maybe you could explain it when you come to dinner. You're so good with these things. Of course, Damien, Jacques replied, barely containing his eagerness. I'll bring some documents that might help. We should ensure everything is properly structured for Sarah's benefit. I also called Henri Beaumont, directly mentioning that I'd been reviewing some international investment opportunities and wondered if he might share his expertise on European markets. His greed overrode his contempt, and he promised to discuss it at dinner. The final piece fell into place when Philippe called from France. The authorities have frozen Beaumont hotel accounts pending investigation, he reported. They have perhaps 2 weeks before arrests are made. Your timing, mon ami, is impeccable. 3 days before the dinner, I had one last meeting with Marcus and Morrison to review the plan. Every angle was covered, every contingency addressed. The house was wired, the FBI was ready, and I had backup plans for my backup plans. You sure you want to do this? Marcus asked. Once you spring this trap, there's no going back. I thought of Sarah, of the brilliant, kind woman Emily and I had raised now, being slowly poisoned by the man who'd promised to love and protect her. They made it personal when they targeted my daughter, I said. They made it war when they mocked my wife's memory. Yes, I'm sure. Morrison grinned. Remind me never to piss off an aerospace engineer. You guys plan better operations than some military units I've known. That night, I stood in my office looking at the wall of family photos. Emily, on our wedding day. Sarah's first steps. Her medical school graduation. The three of us on that last vacation before the diagnosis. Each image strengthened my resolve. I opened my safe and pulled out a small leather journal Emily had given me years ago. Inside, I'd been documenting everything, not just facts and evidence, but my thoughts, my fears, my love for my daughter. If something went wrong, if the Beaumonts were more dangerous than even I suspected, at least there would be a record. On the last page, I wrote, "Tomorrow begins the end of their schemes. For Emily, for Sarah, for justice. The engineer is ready. Let them come." I closed the journal and returned it to the safe along with copies of all the evidence. Then, I poured myself a small scotch, Emily's favorite, the one we'd saved for special occasions, and raised it to her photo. "Almost there, sweetheart," I whispered. "Help me be strong enough to finish this." Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the world in fresh white. But underneath my calm exterior, a storm was building. The Beaumonts thought they were coming to dine with a foolish old widower. Instead, they would find something far more dangerous. A father's love armed with patience, intelligence, and the full weight of justice behind him. The stage was set with the precision of a Swiss watch. Every detail had been considered, every variable accounted for. The dining room table was laid with Emily's best china, the Waterford crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier that concealed one of several recording devices. Hidden cameras covered every angle, all feeding to Morrison's team, monitoring from a van parked 2 blocks away. In my study, FBI agents, Foster and Reeves, waited, watching their own feeds and ready to move on my signal. I had prepared individual manila envelopes, each one placed precisely at its designated seat. Inside each was a carefully curated selection of evidence tailored to its recipient. The one at Jacques' place was particularly thick. The doorbell rang at exactly 6 o'clock. I took a deep breath, thought of Emily, and answered it with my best welcoming smile. The Beaumonts entered like conquering royalty, surveying a peasant's hovel. Henri handed me another expensive bottle of wine, while Marguerite air-kissed my cheeks, her perfume overwhelming, and her smile as fake as her designer handbag. "Damien." Henri boomed in English, "You look well. Retirement suits you, no." The condescension dripped from every word. "I keep busy," I replied mildly, taking their coats. "Please make yourselves comfortable. Jacques and Sarah should arrive shortly." They settled in my living room, immediately switching to French. "The old fool seems cheerful," Marguerite observed. "Perhaps he's finally accepting reality." "Or drinking himself into oblivion," Henri suggested. "Did you see his hands steady enough? But that means nothing. My uncle was a functional alcoholic for years." I served them drinks, maintaining my pleasant facade while documenting every insult. They discussed their plans for the evening, how Jacques would guide me towards signing preliminary documents, how they'd frame it as protecting Sarah's future. They laughed about American gullibility, about how easy it had been to fool the mechanic all these months. Jacques arrived 15 minutes later alone. "Sarah's running late," he announced, kissing his parents. "Emergency surgery. You know how it is." I knew it was a lie. I'd texted Amanda earlier, and she'd confirmed Sarah was off duty tonight. Whatever reason Jacques had for delaying her arrival, it wouldn't matter. "Actually," I said, "that works perfectly. There are some financial matters I'd like to discuss before dinner, and it's probably better without Sarah. She gets so emotional about money." Jacques' eyes lit up with greed. "Of course. I brought those documents we discussed." We moved to the dining room where the envelopes waited like landmines. They settled into their seats, Jacques eyeing his envelope with curiosity, but not yet touching it. "Before we begin," I said, remaining standing, "I should mention something. Henri, you asked about my time in France during our last dinner. I realize I never properly answered." Henri waved dismissively. "No need to bore us with ancient history." "Oh, but it's quite relevant," I continued. "You see, I didn't just visit France. I lived there. 15 years in Toulouse working for Airbus. Beautiful city, wonderful people, excellent schools for learning the language." The silence that followed was deafening. Marguerite's wine glass stopped halfway to her lips. Henri's smile froze on his face. Jacques went very, very still. "In fact," I said, switching to perfectly accented French, "I became quite fluent. Funny how that never came up before. Then again, you all seemed so certain that I was just what was the phrase? Ah yes, un vieil imbécile. An old fool." Marguerite's glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. The sound seemed to break their paralysis. "Damien." Jacques started, his voice carefully controlled. "I don't know what you think you heard." "What I heard," I interrupted, still in French, "was a detailed conspiracy to defraud my daughter, steal her inheritance, liquidate my patents, and possibly have me committed to a nursing home. Or was it an accident you were considering? I must admit you discussed so many options it was hard to keep track." Henri's face flushed dark red. "This is ridiculous. You're putting words in our mouths. We would never—" "November 15th. I cut him off, pulling out my phone. "Would you like me to play the recording? The audio is quite clear. 2 more years, until Sarah's trust matures. I've already laid the groundwork. She trusts me completely." "That was you, wasn't it, Jacques?" Jacques' mask finally slipped entirely. "You recorded us in your own home. That's illegal." "Actually, it's not," I said calmly. "Minnesota is a one-party consent state. Since I was present and aware of the recording in my own home, it's perfectly legal. But please don't take my word for it. Open your envelopes." They hesitated, then slowly reached for the manila envelopes. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the contents. Jacques' envelope contained everything: his 2 previous marriages, the mysterious death of Anna Richter, the bankruptcy of Sylvie Moreau's family, the fraudulent credit cards in Sarah's name, photos of him with Melissa Grant, transcripts of his meetings with Dr. Cromwell about having Sarah committed. Henri's contained detailed documentation of the Beaumont Hotel's financial fraud, the inflated valuations, the embezzled funds, and most damning, notification that French authorities had frozen their accounts and arrest warrants were being prepared. Marguerite's held records of her own involvement in insurance fraud related to Anna Richter's death, along with evidence of her participation in money laundering through the hotel properties. "This is blackmail." Henri sputtered, his English suddenly perfect. "You can't prove any of this." "I don't have to," I replied. "The FBI will handle that part." As if on cue, the doorbell rang again. I walked calmly to answer it, while the Beaumonts sat frozen in their seats. Agents Foster and Reeves entered, their badges visible, their expressions professional. Jacques Beaumont. Agent Foster announced, "You're under arrest for interstate fraud conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and forgery." Jacques shot to his feet. "This is insane. You have no authority." "We also have a warrant for your arrest, based on an Interpol notice from French authorities," Agent Reeves added. "Would you prefer to be extradited first, or face charges here?" As they read Jacques his rights, the front door burst open. Sarah rushed in, still in her scrubs, but clearly not from surgery. Behind her stood Amanda Carter, and surprisingly, Marcus Thompson. "Dad," Sarah exclaimed, then stopped short at the scene before her. "What's going on?" I moved to her side. "Sweetheart, I'm sorry. There are things you need to know." "I already know," she said quietly, and I saw steel in her eyes that reminded me of Emily. Amanda showed me everything. The pills Jacques was giving me, the credit cards, all of it. I've been working with Mr. Thompson for the past week. My jaw dropped. My brilliant daughter had been playing her own game. You knew. Jacques stared at her in shock. But you acted like a victim. Sarah's voice could have cut glass. Yes, I'm quite a good actress when my life depends on it. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the drugs? I'm a Dr. Jacques. I ran toxicology on myself after the third day of your supplements. She turned to me. I wanted to handle it myself at first, but Amanda convinced me to look at what you'd been gathering. We've been coordinating with Marcus all week. The emergency surgery tonight, I asked. I was at the FBI office giving my statement, she said. 3 hours of detailed testimony about everything. The drugs, the coercion, the emotional abuse, the isolation attempts. They have everything they need. Marguerite finally found her voice. You ungrateful little... I'd choose your next words very carefully, Sarah interrupted coldly. Attempted murder charges can still be added based on those drugs. Anna Richter's family deserves justice too. Henri attempted to stand, but Agent Foster placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Mr. and Mrs. Beaumont, we have some questions for you as well. You can answer them here or at the federal building. We demand our embassy, Henri blustered. We have diplomatic immunity. No. I said, savoring the moment. You don't. I checked. Owning hotels doesn't make you diplomats. It just makes you common criminals with expensive taste. As the FBI agents secured the scene, more law enforcement arrived. The Beaumonts were separated for questioning. Jacques, still in shock, kept staring at Sarah as if seeing her for the first time. The trust, he said desperately. The prenuptial agreement. You can't... The prenuptial agreement you had me sign? Sarah pulled out her phone. The one where I supposedly waived all rights to marital assets. My lawyer, my real lawyer, not your friend Vincent, found some interesting irregularities. Seems forgery runs in your family. The agreement is void. I felt a surge of pride. My daughter, the warrior. Emily would have been so proud. As for the trust, I added, I took the liberty of restructuring all family assets 2 weeks ago. Everything is now in irrevocable trusts, with so many layers of protection that your grandchildren's grandchildren couldn't touch it. Though, given you're going to federal prison, that's rather moot. Jacques lunged toward me, but Morrison appeared from the kitchen. He'd been monitoring from inside the house, not the van, and efficiently restrained him. Attempted assault on top of everything else, Morrison noted cheerfully. That's another charge. As they led Jacques away in handcuffs, he turned back one last time. You destroyed everything, he spat at me. No, I replied calmly. You destroyed everything the moment you targeted my daughter. I just made sure you faced consequences. Henri and Marguerite were escorted out next, Marguerite weeping dramatically, while Henri maintained stony silence. The house felt cleaner with them gone. Sarah collapsed into a chair, the steel in her spine finally softening. I sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I began, but she shook her head. Don't apologize for protecting me, she said. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Mom would have known immediately. Your mother would have been proud of how you handled yourself, I assured her. Working with Marcus, gathering evidence, staying strong. You're her daughter through and through. Amanda joined us, followed by Marcus and Morrison. Agent Foster returned from supervising the arrests. We'll need formal statements from everyone, she said, but the evidence is overwhelming. Between Damien's recordings, Sarah's testimony, and the physical evidence, they won't see freedom for a very long time. What about Melissa Grant? I asked. Foster smiled grimly. Picked up an hour ago. She's already trying to make a deal offering to testify against Jacques. Apparently, he promised her millions that didn't exist. The house feels different, Sarah said suddenly. Cleaner, like after spring cleaning. That's because the trash has been taken out, Amanda said firmly. We spent the next 2 hours giving preliminary statements, the FBI agents professional, but kind. Sarah held strong throughout, detailing the gaslighting, the drugs, the slow erosion of her confidence. It was hard to hear, but necessary. As everyone prepared to leave, Morrison pulled me aside. "Hell of an operation," he said admiringly. "Reminded me of some ops overseas. You ever consider a career in intelligence?" "I'm retired," I laughed. "This was a one-time thing." "Still," he said, shaking my hand, "if you ever need anything, call me. Warriors recognize warriors." Finally, the house was quiet, except for Sarah and me. We sat in the living room, the fake family china still on the dining room table, the shattered wine glass swept away, but its memory lingering. "What happens now?" Sarah asked in a small voice. "Now," I said firmly, "you heal. You remember who you are. A brilliant doctor who saves lives. You're not defined by his lies or his schemes. You're defined by your strength, your compassion, your intelligence." "I'll need therapy," she admitted, "to process all of it. The manipulation, the drugs, realizing the man I married never existed. Whatever you need, I promised. We'll get through this together." She leaned against my shoulder. "Dad, thank you. For never giving up. For fighting when I couldn't." "That's what parents do," I said softly. "We protect our children, even when they think they don't need it." We sat in comfortable silence, the house that had seen so much deception finally honest again. Tomorrow would bring lawyers' divorce papers and probably media attention. But tonight, my daughter was safe, her enemies vanquished, and justice served. In the kitchen, I noticed the bottle of wine Henri had brought sitting unopened on the counter. On impulse, I grabbed it and 2 glasses. "What are you doing?" Sarah asked. "This bottle probably cost $2,000, I said, pouring generous servings. "Seems a shame to waste it." We clinked glasses, and I offered a toast. "To Emily, who would have spotted Jacques coming a mile away. To you for being stronger than you knew. And to the power of patience and planning." "To family," Sarah added. "Real family." We drank the Beaumont's wine, and it tasted like victory. Outside, snow continued to fall, covering the tracks of the law enforcement vehicles, hiding the evidence of tonight's drama under pristine white. But we knew what had transpired. We had won. The engineer's trap had worked perfectly, and the wolves who'd come to devour my daughter had instead devoured themselves. 6 months had passed since that explosive November dinner, and the June sunshine streaming through my kitchen windows seemed to wash away the last shadows of that dark period. I stood at the stove preparing breakfast, a simple pleasure that had taken on new meaning in our rebuilt life. The legal proceedings had moved with surprising swiftness. Jacques received 12 years in federal prison for fraud, conspiracy, identity theft, and attempted poisoning. The last charge added when Melissa Grant testified about his detailed plans to incapacitate Sarah. She'd kept recordings of their conversations, hoping to protect herself if things went wrong. Her paranoia became our salvation. Henri and Marguerite Beaumont fought extradition for 3 months before being forcibly returned to France, where they faced charges for embezzlement, money laundering, and connection to Anna Richter's death. The Swiss authorities had reopened that case with new evidence we'd provided. Last I heard, they were looking at 20 years each. The Beaumont hotel empire collapsed within weeks, purchased for pennies by a legitimate hospitality company. Sylvie Moreau, Jacques' first wife, had sent me a letter thanking me for finally bringing justice. She'd used the publicity to start a foundation supporting women who'd been victims of financial abuse. "Morning, Dad," Sarah said, entering the kitchen. The change in her was remarkable. The shadows under her eyes had vanished, replaced by the vibrant glow I remembered from before Jacques. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, and her smile reached her eyes again. "French toast," I offered, sliding a plate toward her. "You spoil me," she laughed, but dug in eagerly. "James is coming by later. We're going to the farmer's market." Dr. James Harrison had entered Sarah's life 3 months ago, introduced by Amanda at a hospital charity function. A veterinarian who ran a clinic specializing in rescue animals, he was Jacques' opposite in every way, genuine, humble, and completely besotted with Sarah. More importantly, he made her laugh again. "He's a good man," I observed, joining her with my own plate. "He is," Sarah agreed. "Know what I love most? He's terrible with money. Can barely balance his checkbook. There's something refreshing about dating someone who doesn't care about my trust fund, because he doesn't even really understand what a trust fund is." We both laughed at that. Sarah's therapy had helped her find humor in the darkness, to reclaim her narrative from victim to survivor. The doorbell interrupted our breakfast. I found Marcus Thompson on my porch, holding a banker's box. "Final documentation," he announced, following me inside. "The FBI released the last of the evidence now that the trials are over. Thought you might want this for your book." Ah, yes, the book. What had started as therapeutic journaling had evolved into something more. The Language of Deception. A Father's Guide to Protecting Family Wealth from Predators was being published next month, with all proceeds going to Sarah's new initiative, a free legal clinic for domestic abuse survivors. "Any word from your friend in France?" Marcus asked, accepting coffee. "Philippe says the Beaumont trials are front-page news. Apparently, we uncovered the tip of a large criminal network. The French authorities are calling it one of the biggest financial fraud cases in decades." "Good," Sarah said firmly. "Maybe it'll stop the next Jacques before he destroys another family." After Marcus left, Sarah and I took our coffee to the back garden. Emily's garden still blooming with the perennials she'd planted years ago. We'd added a small memorial bench where we often sat and talked. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, "about Mom. How she set up that trust specifically for my independence. It's like she knew someday I might need protection." "Your mother was the wisest person I ever knew," I said. "She saw things others missed, including potential." "Like you," Sarah smiled. "Everyone underestimated the quiet engineer. Jacques certainly did." "His biggest mistake," I agreed. "Well, that and crimes. The crimes were probably his biggest mistake." We laughed again, the sound carrying across the garden. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined laughing about any of this. Time and justice had healing powers. James arrived around 10, greeting me warmly before kissing Sarah. Unlike Jacques' polished entrance into our lives, James had stumbled. Literally. He'd tripped over his own feet the first time I met him, sending a tray of appetizers flying. His mortification and genuine apology had told me everything I needed to know about his character. "Mr. Damien," he said now, "I wanted to run something by you. The clinic's expanding, and we're looking for board members. Someone with business experience who could help us stay financially stable. Would you consider it?" I pretended to think about it, though Sarah's hopeful expression had already decided me. "I suppose I could spare some time. Retirement's been a bit too quiet anyway." They headed to the farmer's market, Sarah linking her arm through James's with easy affection. No possession, no calculation, just two people enjoying each other's company. The scholarship fund we'd established had already helped 15 women escape abusive financial situations. The legal clinic had handled over 100 cases. Sarah had turned her pain into purpose, becoming a fierce advocate for those facing similar manipulation. I spent the afternoon in my office working on the final chapters of the book. The publisher had wanted me to sensationalize the story, to focus on the drama and revenge. I'd refused. This was a manual for protection, not entertainment. Every chapter included practical advice: how to spot financial predators, protecting assets, recognizing manipulation tactics, and when to seek help. The dedication had been the easiest part to write, for Emily, who protected our daughter even from beyond, for Sarah, whose strength surpasses any engineering marvel, and for all the parents standing guard against wolves in expensive clothing. As evening approached, I received an unexpected call. Philippe's voice carried across the Atlantic, excited, despite the late hour in France. "Damien, mon ami, you must hear this. Anna Richter. She didn't die from those medications. The Swiss investigation found she survived, went into hiding. She's been found living under another name in Germany. She's agreed to testify. This changed everything. Anna alive meant murder charges instead of just fraud. It meant true justice for a woman we'd thought lost. "Does Sarah know?" I asked. "Not yet. I thought you should tell her." After hanging up, I sat quietly processing this news. Then I called Sarah. "Dad," she answered, concern in her voice. "Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect, sweetheart. But I have news about Anna Richter. Can you and James come for dinner? This is worth celebrating." They arrived within an hour, Sarah's face bright with curiosity. Over Emily's famous lasagna recipe, I shared Philippe's news. "She's alive," Sarah breathed. "Oh, Dad, that's wonderful. She can get justice, real justice. And ensure Jacques never hurts anyone again," James added quietly. He'd become protective of Sarah in ways that warmed my heart. Not possessive like Jacques, but genuinely caring. We talked late into the evening about the implications about hope, about second chances. As they prepared to leave, Sarah hugged me tightly. "Dad, I've been thinking about something. Would you walk me down the aisle again someday, when the time is right with the right person?" I glanced at James, who was suddenly very interested in his shoes, his ears pink. "Nothing would make me happier," I said. "Though maybe a smaller wedding this time." "Backyard wedding," Sarah said firmly. "Mom's garden. Small, real, just family and true friends." "Sounds perfect." After they left, I found myself back in Emily's garden as twilight painted the sky purple. The fireflies were beginning their evening dance, and somewhere a nightingale sang. "We did it, Em," I whispered to the evening air. "She's safe. She's happy. She's strong." The wind rustled through the leaves, and for just a moment I could swear I smelled Emily's perfume, the light floral scent she'd worn for 30 years. Perhaps it was imagination, perhaps memory, or perhaps something more. But in that moment I felt her presence, approving, proud, at peace. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Thank you for being the best dad, for fighting for me, for showing me that real love protects without possessing. Mom chose well. I love you." I smiled, typing back, "Love you too, sweetheart. Always." The stars were coming out now, brilliant in the clear summer sky. Inside the house that had witnessed betrayal and revelation had returned to being simply home. The formal dining room where the Beaumonts had plotted now hosted weekly dinners with Sarah, James, Amanda, and Marcus, a chosen family forged in crisis and strengthened by loyalty. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The book launch testimony preparations for Anna Richter's emergence, the ongoing work of the foundation. But tonight, I was simply Damien, the aerospace engineer father to a remarkable daughter widower, to an extraordinary woman and guardian of a family legacy built on love, not money. The greatest revenge I'd learned wasn't destruction. It was rebuilding. It was Sarah's laughter returning. It was trust slowly restored. It was knowing that Emily's wisdom and my patience had combined to save our daughter from those who would devour her light. As I headed inside, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. "Mr. Damien," a soft voice said. "This is Anna Richter. I wanted to thank you. Because of what you did, I can finally stop running. I can face them. I can get my life back." "You're welcome," I said simply. "No one should have to hide from monsters." "The investigators told me about your daughter, how you protected her. She's lucky to have you." "I'm the lucky one," I replied. "Take care, Anna. Be strong in court. You have more support than you know." After we hung up, I locked the doors, turned off the lights, and headed to bed. On my nightstand sat 2 photos. One of Emily on our wedding day, radiant with joy, and one from last week of Sarah and me at the foundation launch, her smile equally radiant. The engineer in me appreciated the symmetry. We'd built something, Emily and I, not just financial security, but a foundation of values that could weather any storm. Jacques had tried to demolish it with his sophisticated schemes and European airs, But he'd failed to understand the basic engineering principle: the strongest structures aren't the flashiest ones. They're the ones built with patience, reinforced with love, and maintained with vigilance. As sleep claimed me, I thought about the French phrase Jacques had used to mock me: un vieil imbécile, an old fool. Perhaps I was a fool who loved his daughter enough to play a longer game than her enemies could imagine, a fool who honored his late wife's memory by protecting their child, a fool who proved that sometimes wisdom disguises itself as foolishness until the moment of revelation. If that made me a fool, I wore the title proudly. For in the end, this fool had won everything that mattered: his daughter's safety, her happiness, and the complete destruction of those who would have harmed her. Let that be the lesson: never underestimate a parent's love, an engineer's patience, or the power of silence while gathering storms. The Beaumonts had learned too late that the quietest waters run deepest, and the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see coming. Justice served, family protected, mission complete. And somewhere in the summer darkness, I could swear I heard Emily laughing, proud of her husband, the fool who'd outsmarted them all. Epilogue, 1 year later. The wedding was everything Sarah had envisioned: simple, beautiful, and genuine. James stood at the garden altar, tears unashamedly streaming down his face as Sarah walked toward him. She wore Emily's wedding dress again, but this time it seemed to glow with joy rather than uncertainty. "Ready for this," Sarah whispered as we paused at the altar. "Ready to let you go to a good man," I whispered back. "Always." As I placed her hand in James's, I felt Emily's presence stronger than ever. This was right. This was healing. This was love without calculation, partnership without exploitation. During my father of the bride speech, I kept it simple. To James, who sees my daughter's worth in her kindness, not her portfolio. To Sarah, who learned that real strength means knowing when to accept help. And to Emily, who protected us all with wisdom that transcended death. May this marriage be built on trust, maintained with truth, and blessed with the kind of love that enriches rather than diminishes. As the newlyweds danced, Marcus appeared at my elbow. "Heard from Anna lately." "She's doing well," I reported. "Testified brilliantly." Jacques got another 10 years added to his sentence. "Good," Marcus said, though I almost feel sorry for his cellmates. Con artists don't do well in federal prison. "Almost feel sorry." "Nah," we said in unison, then laughed. The evening wound down with sparklers and homemade pie instead of elaborate cake. As Sarah and James prepared to leave for their honeymoon, a road trip to national parks, nothing fancy, Sarah pulled me aside. "Dad, I have something for you." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a photo from her ultrasound appointment. "If it's a girl, we're naming her Emily." I stared at the image, speechless. A grandchild. New life from the ashes of betrayal. "And if it's a boy," I managed. Sarah smiled, that brilliant smile that had returned after so much darkness. "Damien, of course. After the man who taught me that the best revenge is a life well lived." As their car disappeared into the sunset, I stood in Emily's garden surrounded by friends who'd become family, holding the promise of a grandchild, and felt complete. The Beaumonts were history. Sarah was safe and loved. The future stretched bright with possibility. Sometimes the universe demands payment for happiness. We'd paid with pain, fear, and betrayal. But the return on that investment, immeasurable. The engineer had won. The family had endured. And somewhere, Emily smiled. That's my story. A reminder that evil may speak many languages, but love needs no translation. Patience trumps sophistication. Truth demolishes deception. And never ever underestimate the power of a parent's love, or the danger of a patient engineer with nothing left to lose and everything to protect. To those facing their own Beaumont's document everything. Trust carefully, protect fiercely, and remember, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with FBI badges and federal indictments, with family dinners free from predators, with daughters who laugh again, and gardens where love blooms eternal. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you've faced similar betrayals, know you're not alone. If you've protected those you love from wolves in designer clothing, I salute you. And if you're just beginning to suspect that someone you trust might not deserve it, listen to that instinct. It might save everything you hold dear. To my viewers, I ask you, have you ever had to protect your family from someone who pretended to love them? How did you find the strength to act when everyone else was fooled? Share your stories in the comments below. Not for sympathy, but to help others recognize the signs before it's too late. If this story resonated with you, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to this channel. Share it with anyone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back against those who would exploit our trust. Together, we can build a community of protection, wisdom, and ultimately hope. Until next time, remember, love protects, wisdom watches, and sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the patience to let our enemies destroy themselves. Be vigilant, be wise, be the parent, partner, or friend someone needs when the wolves come calling. Thank you, and may your families know only genuine love, true partnership, and the peace that comes from knowing someone stands guard while you sleep. This is Damien signing off. Stay strong, my friends. Stay wise. And never, ever let them see you coming.